Guys, real quick, I wanted to jump on here and just talk about that Frontier. It was an Airbus A321, 228 people on board. Came in for a landing in San Juan. Apparently they had a hard landing where the nose wheel hit pretty hard, and they went around, and during that, from the time the nose wheel touched down and they went around, the left tire on the nose wheel, the tire and the rim came apart, and part of it went through the number one engine. The engine, from what I gathered, didn't fail. I don't believe there was a fire. There's some mixed reports out there. But the tire definitely departed. The nose wheel assembly, here's a picture of it. And I do believe part of it went through the number one engine. You could see on the go around, there's found this video on Twitter. Some smoke coming out of the engine. But anyway, they went around, held for a little bit to run through the checklist, and then did a low pass to confirm that the gear, I guess, was still intact, and then landed. All in all, it was about 40 minutes from the time they went around and landed. And there's two things that I want to kind of touch on. Number one, I'm starting to see, and I'm sure there'll be way more YouTube videos breaking down the accident. This isn't really about the accident. It's kind of just about two things that I see that keep coming up, and this is really common in any incident, is the Monday morning quarterbacking, especially one that I kept coming across. And there was it doesn't say in the report here. Actually, the FAA report, the only thing it says at all is aircraft attempting to land, struck the runway hard, damaging the landing gear, San Juan, Puerto Rico. That's it. That's the only official word that I've seen so far. But a couple people have said, well, it was, I heard it was the first officer flying, and the captain, shame on the captain for not taking over. People that have made those comments, I would imagine the majority of them are not only are they not airline pilots, but I can almost guarantee you that they've never flown an Airbus before. And I don't know if the crew was on, leg 1, 2, 3, or 4 of the day, what time they got up. There's a whole other human factors aspect of it, if it is in fact found out to be the crew's fault, which at this point nobody knows. I mean, it could be a defective nose wheel. There's just not enough information out there, but I'm not going to really talk about that. I just kind of want to talk about the Monday morning quarterbacking of those people, talking about not taking over control after a hard landing. Got a lot of time in the Airbus, and I can tell you from experience that I've had hard landings. I didn't get a load 15 report. Anyway, a little printer prints out, it says load 15 report because it was a hard landing. You write it up in the book, no big deal. But on the Airbus, it's not like the Boeing where the person flying, if you're the pilot monitoring, you can see what the other pilot is doing, the flight control inputs that they're doing. On the Airbus, they could be going full stop, karate chopping, stirring the pot, whatever you want to call it, on the stick, and you're not going to see any of that. Your stick is just going to stay completely neutral because it's not like, again, it's not like the Boeing. And again, the weather at the time, it was, scattered, good visibility, light winds around 5 knots. So whether or not the captain or the first officer, whoever was the pilot monitoring, had their hands on the stick, I don't know. I can tell you that if I was flying with a new first officer or it was really windy, I would have my hand on the stick. But if I was flying with someone that I've flown before or they had flown multiple legs prior and I didn't feel the need that I had to worry about it, my hand probably would have just been, maybe close by, kind of relaxed, but not right there. And I can tell you, by the time you touch down on the mains, the time that it takes you to take your hand from your lap to the stick, it might be too late. And on the Airbus, so if the person's moving the flight controls on their side and then I go and I move mine, you're going to get dual input. So unless you press the takeover button, it's both of you guys are controlling the airplane. What's that mean? It means that that person on the right is going full forward and I'm going full back on the stick. What's the airplane going to do? Essentially nothing. It's going to be flight controls are neutral because it takes both the left stick and the right stick and it averages out, and that's what you get. Where on the Boeing, it's pretty much whoever's stronger. So it's always been kind of a minor complaint on the Airbus, is just maybe a little bit less of situational awareness of what the other person is doing, just because you don't have that control wheel in your face. So anyway, and the other thing that I saw, and this isn't even confirmed if the engine was failed or not, is I read some criticism of the crew for entering a holding pattern and then doing a flyby for the air traffic control to kind of verify that the gear was down and locked. Now, if they were having an engine issue, like I said, it doesn't appear that the engine actually failed or was on fire. There was just some smoke coming out of it. But, if you have an engine issue, vibration, partial power, whatever, it's going to tell you to land ASAP, right? Land as soon as possible. But, to have two emergencies in one, you have an engine issue and then not knowing if your gear is down and locked, I mean, that's a whole separate issue. So I don't fault the crew at all for doing a flyby. And when it's all said and done, I think it was, by the time they went around and touched down, it was like 40 minutes or so. So again, a lot of these people that are making these comments and, I'm sure the videos will come later. It's a lot easier to be on the ground reading a report saying what you would do when you've never flown the airplane, you haven't been in that position, so on and so forth. And especially because, like I said, and I don't know the circumstances of what was going on in the flight deck, but I just can tell you from my experience, if it's calm winds, I'm probably going to be pretty relaxed and not have my hands guarding the flight controls. And I don't know who was flying, so for everyone that said, no, the first officer should have been guarding the flight controls, yeah, that's a whole separate dynamic. And, go ahead and try to take over, from a captain on the airline or on a normal day. I'm not saying you can't do it or it can't be done, but it's a lot easier said than done. There's certainly a dynamic in the flight deck. There's a captain, there's a first officer, so just to assume that you're going to have a superhero FO take over and save the day is I don't know. Nobody knows why the nose wheel came off. Yeah, they had a hard landing, but maybe it was it could be a defective wheel. You just don't know. I've had plenty of hard landings where the nose wheel came down hard and the nose wheel didn't come apart on me. So until you get the actual official report, just kind of, I like to just give the crews the benefit of the doubt, because I know myself, when I see these incidences, I don't ever think, man, that'll never be me. We're only human, and this is just one of those things where before everyone just kind of crucifies the crew, first just sit back, wait and see actually what the report tells us, and then, secondly, and I think more importantly, don't assume that it could never happen to you, or that you would make sure that, you would never have another pilot have a hard landing and you'd be able to take over in a split second. I'd like to think that I would be able to do that too, but the reality is that's not always the case. And I think the more that people recognize that, hey, that could happen to me, I think community-wise we're a safer pilot group, because as soon as you start thinking, oh, that'll never happen to me, I think that's where you could kind of find yourself in a little bit of trouble, because there's been plenty of accidents of really high-time, high-experienced pilots that have done things like take off with the gust lock engaged, right? So don't ever think that it can't happen to you, and I certainly don't think that it can never happen to me, but I just think it was interesting because with social media today, something happens and there's, hundreds of videos with clickbaity titles and talking about what they did wrong. Listen, it's fine. Wait, see what happens, what the FAA and NTSB report says, and I know it'll probably take a while, but I can assure you that they will probably get it right. And I think it'll be interesting to see in this case who was flying, maybe what did their day look like, how many hours were they flying, how many legs that day. Just stuff like that, because I find that the human factors issue of these accidents, incidents, whatever you want to call them, I find them really intriguing. And another interesting thing, because I truly do love the human factors aspect of this, and I did ALPA CIRP. It's Critical Incident Response Program, and what that is if you have a crew, it doesn't have to just be your airline, it doesn't even have to be ALPA actually, but if a crew has an incident, let's say a runway incursion or something like that, or they bend some metal, we as CIRP volunteers are trained, and we kind of reach out to them and just have a conversation, kind of help them decompress. And a lot of times the incidents that happen, they'll say, hey, I've been to that airport hundreds of times before. I've shot that approach, hundreds of times before. I can't believe it happened. And it's not, it's never just one thing. It's always kind of that whole Swiss cheese model that leads up to this. But I just find it really interesting, and this is kind of going on a tangent, come to the realization that anything that can happen, I feel it could possibly happen to me, and I don't think that I am some superhuman pilot where it would never happen to me. And I think that's kind of what keeps me safe, because I've made plenty of mistakes in the past, and just knowing that, hey, you're not perfect, I think keeps you in the mindset of, hey, let me just double check everything, let me not sit on my hands on this approach or whatever. So I just wanted to touch on that a little bit because I know it's coming. I know it happened on the Endeavor flight in Toronto, and plenty of incidents before where people just immediately go to the crew and crucify them. And so I don't know, I just wanted to put that out there because I think anyone could have a bad day. I think any one of us could make a mistake or have a hard landing. I don't care how much experience you have. And that's another thing. I saw someone make a comment, experience matters. What does that mean? Do you have any idea how much time the captain or first officer had in the airplane? I don't understand how you could just automatically assume that the crew is inexperienced. So to just make a comment on the internet, oh, experience matters, or oh, it's a low-cost carrier, what does that mean? Some of the most professional pilots I've ever flown with were long-time Spirit pilots or Frontier pilots. I know Frontier crews that have got more time in the airplane than I've been alive, right? So just ignorant comments like that, they drive me insane. I've jump seated a lot on Frontier, and nothing but professional crews all around. So maybe they just had a bad day. Maybe it was the Nosewheel. Who knows, right? We don't know. But again, I just wanted to jump on here and kind of talk about it because I don't know. These are it affects me, it affects all of us as pilots, and I just kind of want to share some information of kind of how maybe if you weren't familiar with how the flight controls on an Airbus work, that's a very little tiny aspect of it that maybe you didn't know. So, all right, guys, thanks.